All right, construction champions, it's your host, Ron Nussbaum, and we're here with another jam-packed episode of Construction Champions Podcast, where you come to learn how to be the champion you can be in your construction business today. And today, we have a great guest, Lyle. Thank you for joining us here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Ron.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear your story. I got to already read it and go over it a little bit and hear about all the great things that you know about the construction industry. So, Lyle, why don't you spend some time, let all the construction champions out there know who you are, what you do, and kind of your history.
Yeah. I'm Lyle Nearby with got a couple things going on. I own a couple territories in a franchise called Advanaclean, where we do some indoor air quality things like mold remediation, air duct cleaning, moisture control. We spend a lot of time in crawl spaces. Then I'm also a coach with Win Rate Consulting. My background started off in construction many years ago. About 30 years ago, I right out of high school jumped on a construction site and did that for about 4 or 5 years, and then I went into, believe it or not, retail management. Back in the late 80s, early 90s in New Jersey, where I'm from, the construction industry kind of fell apart. And the home building ceased to a halt. So, there was no more work in construction. Left that, went to go work for a little company called Tiffany Co, the little blue box, where spent a little bit of time in distribution and then moved over to retail management, and had been in retail management for about 20 years. And then after I got sick of retail management and retail as a whole, I decided to buy into a franchise. I've been doing that for a little bit over 12 years now. So I went from selling diamonds to cleaning up mold and crawling around under people's houses.
Yeah, I understand. I've spent a little bit of time in crawl spaces myself. I can understand that. But what I love is that gap in between the two. We're working retail for Tiffany. I think that's going to bring a very unique perspective in stuff that you learned over the time. So we'll dive right into it. And I'm going to ask the $1 million question. And that is, what makes a construction champion?
Man, it's pretty simple, quite honestly. In my mind, it's very simple. Apparently, in people's minds, it's not, because we run into it all the time, where follow-up and doing what you say you're going to do makes a construction champion. We run into all the time that I get people call me like, I can't get this person to call me back. I can't get that person to call me back. I don't know when this is going to be done. I don't know when that's going to be done. In the air duct cleaning side of my business, we follow a lot of home renovation companies. And we hear the frustrations of the customers from the communication standpoint of what the process of the rebuild or the reconstruction or the just doing something in the house, and then we follow it up, and they're like, I'm so glad you showed up on time. I'm so glad you followed up. I'm so glad you actually communicated, because that was lacking for the last 6 months while we were doing this renovation in our house.
I love it. Communication is something that's near and dear to my heart, especially in residential construction. So how do you go about, you're a leader in your industry and what you're doing right now? I did a little bit of homework. I always try to, and I know you're one of the top dogs. You're looked at in that space and with the franchises as the guy. So how do you go about having that high level follow-up, that communication? What are some of your best practices?
Yeah, it's a non-starter for us. It's part of our core values that we discuss, if not daily, at minimum weekly during all of our meetings, of communicating proactively. That not only means communicating proactively with the customer, it also means that our technicians and our frontline laborers are communicating with us and the management team for the company, so then we can communicate with the customers if we need to.
Mm.
So it's talked about all the time in my business. It's one of the main topics we discuss every Monday morning when we have our production meetings. It's just the communication. I think our guys are sick of hearing it, but it is a differentiator. It sets the standard for the rest of the industry.
I love that. And one thing that you touched on there, and I think we focus so much on that tech or foreman or whoever is that customer facing person talking to that customer, that we can lose sight of that back end communication between the frontline workers and the management or the office staff. And how have you been able to create an environment where that becomes a priority?
Again, it goes back to our core values, and it's written in our core values, so we talk about it all the time. And again, communication leads to communication, and if a customer calls me at 5 o'clock and the guys have already gone home and I don't know the answer to something that the customer is asking me, I've got to interrupt the text world outside of work by calling them and asking them what happened. So, I mean, I tell them, listen, if you don't want me bothering you at home, if you don't want me calling you during your family time or whatever time it is, if you're out at a sports game or at the gym, whatever it is, then you need to tell me, you need to communicate. So we rely a lot on, because I'm not really sitting in the office too much. My manager here, Corey's not sitting in the office too much. So we rely a lot on text messaging. And text messaging, even voice text or sending us pictures, whatever form of communication we can use, so that when if the customer does call, we have the answer for them right away.
Yeah, it is important to be able to be on top of that from a company perspective. Because the
Right.
one thing that can happen with communications is there's a lot of silos that can quickly be built when people are having one-on-one communication. So keeping everybody in the loop, that is a priority. And what you reference core values a couple of times. I love core values. I think everybody should have not just business core values, but personal core values, how you live your life. What are those core values at your company?
Yeah, we have, ours have it spells out clean. So customer service, love what you do, educate yourself and the customer, appreciate each job, and then never compromise. And then there's bullet points in between each or beneath each one of those to kind of drill it down a little bit. But again, if you're not going to love what you do, this probably isn't going to be the place for you. And it doesn't mean that you have to love duct cleaning or mold remediation, but you need to love helping the customer. You need to love the outcome, and then customer service, being 20 years of retail, my background is customer service. That's a given. Communication is the key to customer service. There should be no surprises.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something I would like to kind of dive into is what is some of the stuff, because I don't get to talk to a lot of guys that spent 20 years in retail and then back into the construction industry. So
Right.
I think you probably have some golden nuggets that you brought with you from that period of time in your life to what you're doing now. That'll probably, if I had to guess, out of box in the construction industry.
They are. I mean, honestly, what I see most is, especially, I'm like I said, I'm a coach with win rate, so I coach. I mean, I've got a few roofers, I've got a couple of concrete guys, I've got some home management companies, and the one thing that's common that I need to stress to everybody is don't be combative. The customer may not always be right, but they don't know they're not right. So you can definitely disagree with the customer, but again, at the end of the day, the customer holds all the cards. They can make the referral, they can make the recommendation, they can give you more business, they can badmouth you. Not that you want to bow down to the customer at all, but you need to communicate in a way to help them understand your point of view. And I will say this, one of the biggest nuggets that I have as well, and I've only had to use this one less than a half dozen times in the last 12 years, is know when to say when. Not every customer is going to be a customer for you. So if and when you come across a customer that your gut is telling you, I just shouldn't take this job, don't take it. Don't bid on it. And then feel free to tell the customer and say, I just don't think this is the right job for us. I wish you well. Because we've all taken those jobs that we know we're going to be end up going bad, but we took them because we needed the money, we needed the people, need to keep the guys working for whatever need we had. We took that job, but we knew in our gut it was going to go south before we even started it, and it did. And that's what you have to try and stop.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Sometimes it's just better parting as friends or acquaintances than going into business together. And one thing that what you just spoke on about being combative is, we have to understand that customers and homeowners are going to have these emotional responses. And it's our job to understand that. Like, whether we believe that to be reality or not, it is reality for our customer. So I'm a big component of, instead of being combative, collaborate with them. Like, to that end outcome.
Being able to be empathetic can go a long way.
Yeah.
And you more times than not, when a customer is lashing out at you, it's not because of anything you did. They may have woke up on the wrong side of the bed. They may have a sick kid at home. They may have, whatever reason, they're dealing with something else and they just had to lash out at somebody. So you were an easy target, and it's unfortunate. And sometimes you have to ask the questions. Okay, now somebody put this to me the other day and I loved it. Listen, what we're dealing with, the paint on the wall is not that big of a deal by the way of your reaction. So tell me, what are you really upset about? And finding out exactly what they're upset about, because it could be that it is the paint color, but doubtful. Maybe it's, oh, I'm sorry, I backed into my husband's car on the way out of the house today and he's all mad at me and I'm taking it out on you. My apologies. So if you're empathetic and you're able to find out and drill down with questioning what the real problem is, you can come to a nice mutual solution that, quite honestly, will benefit everybody.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you hit on there that is so important is that it's not you. Like, it's not personal, but we have a knee-jerk reaction to just be like, oh, well, you're coming at me and I'm going to come right back. And that is what spirals out of control and gets you in real trouble.
Right. And it can go real bad. It can go bad very quickly if you do react poorly, if you do react in a combative nature. So if you're empathetic, I'm sorry this happened. It's not the way we do things. It doesn't meet our standards. I completely understand what you're saying. How would you like this to be fixed?
Yeah, and I love when you just talked about asking the questions. Let's get down to the real problem, because like you said, the paint color is probably not the reason for somebody being really escalated or just upset.
Right.
There's probably something else. I mean, did somebody probably maybe parked in the wrong place, or maybe somebody said something in passing and it rubbed them the wrong way. And then this is just how they found their way to just I like to say that in construction, a customer can go from 0 to 5-alarm fire in 15 minutes. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
how it's all how we handle the situation that keeps it from going there.
Yeah, we had a customer a couple weeks ago. She gave us a 5-star review, loved everything we did. One of the nicest reviews ever written about us. Then, a week later, she emails me and she's upset because she says this was broken, that was not done right, this was not done right. And after I called her and we got on the phone, I come to find out that she wasn't upset with us. She was upset because her daughter was upset, and her daughter has some mental illness issues. She's got severe OCD, so when something doesn't go the way she was expecting it, it really bothers her. I mean, like really bothers her. So I finally said, her name is Deb. I said, hey, Deb, how about this? Can you ask your daughter what she would like from me to compensate her for the broken item? I'd love to write your daughter a check for whatever she feels is fair. $200, $300. I just want to make her. And as soon as I acknowledged that her daughter was the upset one, Deb's tone totally changed. She was very happy. I'll get back to you. I appreciate you. I appreciate that. You're so nice. Said all the right things, and you could just tell she was now smiling versus looking for a fight. And I knew as soon as I got the email that it wasn't about what we did, but it was about how her daughter was reacting to what we did.
Yeah, and I would say that right there's master class in
Yeah.
how to work through that. That's years of experience. So for all the construction champions out there listening, you just got 30 years worth of customer service experience right there in an example, real life. Couple weeks ago, how to work through something like that and get to that outcome that works best for you and the customer. Because at the end of the day, that's what you want. Is you want a situation where everybody's happy as you part ways and they go out and they refer and they bring in new business. And a lot of times when something goes south, your recovery from that can actually make that customer more of a fan than they were beforehand.
And that's exactly it. And you just nailed it there, that when things will go south, it's not if things go south, it's when things go south, because things always tend to go south at some point, and it's how you react to it and how you acknowledge it that's going to set you apart from the rest of the industry. Because there's a lot of guys that get hot-headed and they do take it personal.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't take it personal. It's not personal. It's business. And sometimes, unfortunately, when we're dealing face to face with our homeowners and our customers, we become therapists at some point. And you just have to acknowledge it.
Yeah, it's amazing because we're in a people business. There's a lot of variables. Not only is there a construction project happening, which has an unlimited amount of variables in itself, you have employees, you have customers, you have family of customers, you have other subcontractors. Like there's so many variables. So when you say it's not if it is going to go something at some point in time, it's going to go sideways, and it's up to us to be able to navigate that once that happens.
Absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And that, to me, that's what being a construction champion is. That's what setting yourself apart from the rest. And that's not even for the bad stuff that goes south, but even for the good stuff when you're even when you're submitting a bid. Set yourself apart, be empathetic. Whatever you're doing is costing somebody a lot of money, most likely.
Yeah, I think I address it. So one thing I hear all the time is that a car is people's biggest investment other than their house. Right. And I like to say, well, that's a person that hasn't done a home renovation, a remodel, or something on their house, because that would be the most expensive thing you do besides buy your house.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I just last year renovated a beach condo that we had bought. we bought it knowing we were going to have to fully gut it, and we're 3 hours away, almost 4 hours away from where the beach condo is. So it's not like I could really manage it very closely. So, and the contractor, although he was very good and came very highly recommended, was not very communicative.
Mm.
And that frustrated me quite a bit. And not that I wanted a communication from him every day, but maybe every couple of days, maybe once a week, of where we were at. So again, going back to the communication, just you have an opportunity there to set yourself apart from everybody else by communicating and having a communication program of how many times you're going to touch that customer before they make a decision, how many times once they make that decision, how often you are going to communicate with them.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I say all the time, you have to have a system in place that you can train on. You have to have a singular way how you communicate with your customers, and you got to have a game plan. If you don't have that stuff going in there, you're setting yourself up for failure when it comes to communication. And it's stuff that if we proactively look at and just do right, it's easy. It just becomes part of the system, and it becomes, we turn that biggest complaint around to the biggest compliment.
Yeah, I mean, some companies, some of the bigger companies have portals that the customers can check into, but there's nothing like a human element to that. Even if your project manager is talking to them on site, what about getting a call from somebody in the office and saying, hey, just following up this week, this is what we got done, this is what our plan is for next week.
Yeah, I love it. And you're on both ends of it. So when I hear you say about like, this is how my project went, and then this is how we're doing it here, you're taking that how you felt and then turning that into a better company and better culture where you're at.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm leading from experience on both ends.
I love it, Lyle. It has been a fantastic conversation today. So if any of the construction champions out there listening wanted to reach out to you, wanted to follow you, what's the best way to go about that?
Yeah, honestly, the best way is either it's just Lyle Nearby on Instagram or on Facebook, or LinkedIn if you guys are on LinkedIn. Just hit me up with an instant message on there, and I'll respond. And like I said, I do also do some coaching, so I will probably respond in my coach voice.
Awesome. Well, it has been fantastic having you here today. I've loved the conversation, and thank you.
Well, I appreciate it, Ron. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So, all right, construction champions, we unpacked a lot in this episode, not just about communication, but talking about communication. At the beginning of the episode, Lyle talked a lot about weekly, daily meetings and talking about follow-up and having those conversations, not just with your customers, but with your staff as well. So everybody ends up on the same page. And then we moved on to making sure that you understand what's happening out in the field, that you have a touch on what's going on in making it personal for your customers, making sure you have empathy when you're talking to them. Because when stuff goes sideways or it goes south, there's a lot of different ways we can respond. But asking the questions to get down to the root cause of that problem and fixing that will create an upset customer that becomes your biggest raving fan. And that's what we're here to do. That's what champions do. Champions just don't show up and accept this as a status quo. That an upset customer is an upset customer. That's not what we're here to do. What we're here to do is figure out how we can take an upset customer and make them our biggest fan and make it a win for them and our company and our employees. So go take a look in the mirror. Are you doing that every day at your company? Are you positioning yourself to where communication matters? And if you are, are you talking about it? Because if you think it matters and nobody in your company understands that it matters because you're not having conversations about it, I'm going to tell you right now, it probably doesn't matter to them. So, champions, it has been a great episode. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, go be the champion you were meant to be.